Call 729-6626 and ask for me, Julie Malone. Salem Memorial District Hospital. Every patient, every encounter, every time.
At the KSMO studios here at 1340, we welcome you to Wednesday morning. It is the 14th day of November, and we have a special guest with us, Michele Kersaw. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad you can make it over. Well, the family's gotten pretty excited with Nathan's election, so got to go through a lot of different steps to get things done, but congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. We're so appreciative, and we're really excited, and he's very excited to serve as judge for this county, so we're just very, very thankful for everyone's support.
We thank him for his service to our community, and he's been around a while, and he's been working in the prosecutor's office, so people may have heard his name. It may not have associated with, now it's going to be judge. So.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit of a change.
Yeah, here come the judge. Right?
That's what my aunt's been saying too. Here come the judge.
Yeah, there you go. Woo, baby. We can have a lot of fun with that one.
Yep.
But we probably will need to calm that down right now. But anyway, glad to have you with us. Michele's here. Michele does some outstanding work in trying to let people know just how to protect different things when that time comes. And none of us want to face it, but it's all inevitable. We're all going to face that day sooner or later. And with the changes in laws, and I think people have perceptions, maybe they watch too much TV or Perry Mason, and they get to the, somebody passes and they start reading the will, and everybody's there and waiting for the announcement, and as soon as it happens, they're all either rich or they're poor, or they're mad, or they're going to kill somebody. Doesn't really work that way. There's a few other minor things in between there, right?
Correct.
A lot more than minor.
Right. So most of what I'm doing right now is trying to educate our community on what the what we call estate planning documents are and what they actually do. So the most common one is the will, like you mentioned. And most people don't understand what a will actually does. So we all hear avoid probate, avoid probate. A will actually is a document that gives the judge guidance on what to do in the probate process. So it actually requires that court process. So that's one of the big things people don't understand. And then the other thing that people usually think about is planning for death. And then we forget that piece on planning for incapacity. So, we're living longer and longer. And so a lot of us are going to encounter a time when we may not be mentally capable of making our own decisions, whether it be dementia or Alzheimer's or just old age, or you just don't want to anymore.
Or it could be an accident that forces you into that position.
Yes, or God forbid, some kind of accident, even at a younger age, and you're in a coma or some kind of traumatic brain injury. Right. And so that's the piece, too, that a lot of times people don't plan for as well. And so those are the two things we focus on when we start educating.
When we're young, we're invincible.
Yeah.
Everything... I can handle that. I can do it. No problem. And suddenly you're not young anymore. And that really, it kind of catches up with you. You don't really start thinking about this at a young age because you just feel like I'm going to live forever.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that we don't, but we don't. And when these kind of changes start to happening, Michele, a lot of times people don't realize that you really need to start planning for this at an earlier age. A lot of people, I know, even myself, we just kind of went through it. And I'm ripe old 61 now. So, you think, okay, 61. Well, you're still, some people say you're still a young man. Mm-hmm. Yet, I read obituaries every day, and I see people at 55, 60, 45, 50, accidents, heart attacks, strokes. We all know that they can happen. You don't know when something's going to happen to you. You don't have any idea. You cannot sit there and say, well, I can put this off till 65, and then when I get my Medicare, my paid for, my Social Security, I'll start looking at it that is just waiting too long. You don't want to do that. You want to start getting everything in place because it takes time, doesn't it?
Right. It takes a little bit of time, and the other thing is that if we wait too long, especially with the incapacity that might come along with some of those diseases that we usually associate with the age. Mm-hmm. If we wait too long and there becomes a question of whether we have that legal capacity to sign the documents, it becomes a sticky situation, and it could lead to conflict among your family and loved ones later in time. So if you have some of these memory issues or some other mental issues, and we wait too long, and we're signing where we're having periods of being lucid and not, that could be challenged later on. So if you do it early, when there's no dispute, about your mental state, that really helps people a lot.
And one of the things that when you start talking about family conflict, and this does happen quite a bit, before you make your decisions and when you start to do these things, you really need to sit down with your family. This needs to be a family discussion, doesn't it?
Yes. So the first starting point is that you need to be doing the planning with your partner. So any attorney that you're working with or any type of discussions really should be joint discussions between you and your significant other, whether you're married or unmarried, because we can plan for all of those situations, but it needs to be joint decisions.
Okay.
And so that's the first person you want to get on board. And
That's usually pretty important.
And it's sometimes the hardest. I mean, Nathan and I have even struggled with that, especially with minor children. It can become a struggle sometimes on disagreements, on thinking about if we're gone, who would make these parenting decisions, who would be best with the finances. And so it can actually strengthen your relationship with your significant other working through those issues. And I help people do that.
Scare the bejeebers out of you.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
it sometimes does, but that's life, right?
So starting point, of course, is if you have any life partner, work with them.
Okay.
And then, and we do help people with that in our office as well. And then, yes, of course, we give our clients suggestions too if they need help talking to other family members. So one of the things you're going to have to do is pick people to serve in these roles, right? And it's not always an easy role to serve, whether it be a trustee or an executor or what we call an agent under power of attorney, just the people that are going to handle your assets for you or take care of your kids or your family for you. And so, of course, it's always best if we can give them a heads up and let them know what to expect. And the two big things that I tell people to discuss with their family is we'll help you get organized. We'll get everything in order. We'll get that plan in place. Talk to your family. Let them know they have the lifelines there of an attorney and a CPA. Those are the two people they're going to want to see. So if they're going through that horrible situation where you are in a coma or you've got a mental issue going on or you've passed away, when they're very emotional, we hope that it be as simple as grabbing the documents, calling the attorney, making an appointment, calling the CPA, making an appointment, and then let us do the heavy lifting. Because if you've got everything organized and the plan in place, then it really is a matter of, okay, what's the best we can do with tax law at the CPA, with the accountant, and how can we make this administration smooth on you and get you access to the assets you need?
There are a lot of steps that are involved, and you're simplifying this pretty easy, but there are a lot of steps involved, and there's a lot of things to consider in all your assets and different things of that nature and accounts. Michele, when people start thinking about, they always want their children to be better off than they were, if at all possible.
Yeah.
And people want to leave things to their children. Well, recently we just looked at long-term care insurance, and you realize, even in our area, which is not a high-cost area, at about somewhere between $4,500 and $5,500 a month is just long-term care if you get put into a nursing home or a assisted facility.
Right.
When you start thinking about that, you think all those assets that you accumulated can go down by the wayside. But if you don't protect them at all, they're gone. And you definitely want something there for your children if at all possible. But the planning is the big thing, and that's what's the hardest thing for people, that realization that I've got to sit down. I've got to think of all the different things that we have, all the accounts we have, all the different things we have, all the children. Who am I going to make that decision with about making them the executor of my estate, or who's going to take care of, like you mentioned, my children. These are all
big decisions.
Touchy, decision, because if you have 3 or 4 children and it looks like you favor one over another, and that's not really the case. Right. But it has that appearance of that, where if somebody reads we'll say just a document that is cold and says, well, this child's going to be my executor, and if they don't want to do it, it'll go to this child. And if they don't want to, well, if you're the fourth one there, you're thinking, wow, they really don't think
I was
very
number
highly.
4.
Okay, am I right?
Right.
I mean, this does happen, and people take it offensively. There's no offense to it. A lot of times it's usually the oldest child that will be the executor. But in the case of my mom and dad, it was the youngest. I was the one that when my older sister didn't want to do it, my brother didn't want to do it, and my parents asked. Right. And so when it came down, they asked me, would I do it? If I didn't want to do it, they were going to let an attorney just do the whole thing. Well, sure, I'll take care of it. You got to really should have somebody in your family be associated with, so they can speak with the attorney and then work together.
Right, and then they know they know you. Especially important in that situation where you're caring for somebody. So if you're caring for aging parents, and you're the trustee, well, if Edward Jones or a corporate institution, is the trustee, they're not going to know what was special to mom or dad
Right.
and what you need to spend the money on. And can you imagine trying to get a hold of them to do a distribution,
Who's in charge, right?
for something that is special to them, a collector's item or something that keeps them comfortable, or, whatever it might be. And there is a lot of tension. Like you said, there can be a lot of tension if we don't talk to, especially our kids, our nieces and nephews, our aunts and uncles, or whoever you might choose. If we don't talk to them and say, this is why we put the order of 1, 2, 3. Okay, and how do you guys feel about that? And a lot of times when my clients talk to their family members, a lot of them don't want to serve, just like what you said. But if they don't have that talk, and mom and dad are gone, and all they see is the list, and they're number 4 on the list,
You're the
then we get
executor.
fights. Then all of a sudden they care, and they get a fight about it.
Yeah.
And the important thing also to explain to them is, okay, if one of the children is in charge, is the trustee or the executor, and they're in charge, they are still obligated to act for the best interest of all of you.
Absolutely.
And they have to follow our instructions. And so make that clear, too, so they don't think somebody's getting more, getting favored. Yeah, like you said.
So, these are big decisions that have to be made. But the first big decision you have to make is actually to start this process.
Right.
That's the biggest
Right.
decision to do. So, we're having a get-together tomorrow night at Main Street Cafe, 5:30. You guys are actually buying dinner.
Yes.
Steak
We're
and
providing
lobster
dinner.
for everybody,
Not
right?
steak and
Oh,
lobster.
doggone it. It must have
Whatever
been that memo I missed.
Shayla's got a delicious menu there.
Yeah, no, she does. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding about the steak and lobster.
Yeah.
Must have been that memo you sent me. But a real nice dinner, and sit down and in a relaxed atmosphere, talk about some serious things that people really need to consider. You're going to have Larry Gray there with you. and
Yes,
Larry's
so we will have a CPA.
He can talk to you about the different tax implications.
Correct.
But you're going to talk a little bit about how important it is to get all your paperwork in order. There's a lot of different things. We have healthcare directives.
Yeah.
You can start a trust. You might want to have a trust. Some people might want to incorporate. I mean, there is that possibility that if there's a large family, you may want to incorporate and have those assets put into a corporation when you're done. There's a lot of different options, and that's why we're so glad that you're here today, because it's not just a one-size-fits-all.
Right. And that's the problem with the solution that a lot of people are jumping to today, going on LegalZoom or going online and pulling a document.
Oh, sure, it's easy.
And they are given misinformation. That's why we're trying to just start on that point of educating, because a lot of people, when they jump online and get a document, don't understand exactly what that document will do, just like we talked about with the wills, and they don't know, nor are they trained to catch those other things like we talked about. There may be advantages to have an LLC own the family farm. There may be, there's all these other things that play into that. And with trust especially, we have freedom to contract. So we can do a lot of neat things with trust to leave specific instructions for your family and try and prevent that conflict that you wouldn't know about unless you are an attorney practicing in this area of law. So that is a problem that we see a lot right now. So we just start with the education piece, and that's why we host events like this dinner.
Right. And another thing is the wording. And I know that, and I'll say that we have, my partner and I are using Michele. And were some times when we would go through these documents, and we're spending 2 hours going through documents, that one word changes the whole context of what was in that paragraph, that you actually have to sit there and determine, is that the word we want to use? May or will is a whole different ballgame. And if a judge looks at it, well, you don't have to, it says may. If it says will, you have to do it. So, those little, it doesn't sound like much, but it can be a major hang up when everything goes down, saying, well, this is kind of vague.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want vague. That's why I went and got all this done. So it's very critical that people understand when you go to LegalZoom and stuff, that's a lot of those mays. Where when they go to an attorney, it will be a will, or this will take place, this must take place before that can happen. You put it all in a semblance of order, where when you go to LegalZoom, you're just going to get a hodgepodge of papers and say, fill them out and go ahead, and you can submit them.
And then gives a false sense of security.
And then when the time comes, you have nothing.
Right.
You're not protected.
Well, and that does happen a lot too. So, especially with trust. So, in order for a trust to work, we actually have to have assets or property owned by the trust, and that's a big piece of working with somebody to hold your hand through that as well, and do a lot of follow up. So that takes some time.
It takes time.
Yeah.
A lot of time.
Yeah.
sometimes a lot more time than you think it's going to take. But you're right. But the idea is that this initial starting point is where you need to find out what fits you. And that's why for somebody like yourself and Larry, when you're there and people can ask you a direct question,
Right.
they can say, okay, this is kind of my situation, and I know you can't answer a question about a person without
Right.
them being a client. I mean, we should all
Right.
know that. She can't give a one-size-fits-all answer because
Right.
that's not the case. However, if you are there and you have a question about, okay, I have this situation, what do you see might be the best solution? Well, people can ask that question.
Right. And so we'll talk about all the different basic planning tools are, what they do, and then the neat thing about having Larry there is to actually walk through those scenarios. Okay, so what tax implications are there if I do a trust? What tax implications are there if my family inherits, X amount of money, or inherits a corporation or an LLC, and we can ask those questions because those are things that people often really want to understand as well, and there's not much information out there, accurate information out there for them. So I think it'll be really beneficial.
That really, when people come together, they need to kind of go through. You'll have a number of steps that people need to consider, right?
Right.
When you first start talking, so people need to listen to all these different steps because you may think that doesn't apply to me. Yeah, I'll tell you something. Most of it does.
Yeah.
Even if you think it's not that big a deal, it does. If you own a house, if you own property, if you own a savings account, checking account, brokerage account, all these different things. Even if you own a post office box, that access to that
Yeah.
post office box, if you don't have that thing done,
The
you
right
can't get in.
documentation, they're not
And they
getting in
won't
without a
give you-
judge.
And they won't give you the document until you got to get a court order. Am I correct?
Correct.
Little stuff that you don't even think. Now, oh, that's a post office box. What's the big deal? Years ago, I can honestly say the Postal Service here, if you ask the guys at the window, they'd go get it for you. And they can't do that anymore.
That's like one of those examples I always say, this is why people don't like lawyers. Because I'm sure some lawyer got them in trouble for that.
Well, I don't know if they got in trouble, but I think the Postal Service realized that it's a private box. And if their name's not on it, they don't really have
Right.
access to that box. And so, we're just trying to highlight a few things. Yeah,
Right.
It doesn't sound like much.
Well, in the bank account, I have people, this happens to me at least a couple times a year, where a family will come into my office, say, Uncle Joe had a bank account at Town and Country Bank. We can't find any recent statements, so we don't know exactly how much was in there, but I know he had an account. And then I have to tell them, well, he didn't have anyone else's name on that account. You have to take that through probate court. So you have to pay me up front to file a lawsuit. So what are you going to do? Spend $1,000 to see how much is in there on attorney's fees to guess how much is in there, and it could be $50 or it could be $20,000. And a lot of times they walk away, and then the money will eventually just go to the government.
Does that go to go to the Missouri unclaimed
Yeah,
assets?
so it will go to. So there's $988 million of unclaimed property in Missouri right now, and so that's how some of that gets there.
Right.
Yeah.
So eventually you could possibly get it, but you don't know how much it is. And even
Right.
then, they don't tell you how much there is. They'll say it's over $50
Right.
or under $50.
And then you've got to prove. I think you've got to prove the address or whatnot.
You got to prove relationship.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you're still going to have to pull out all the documents to get it done. So why go through all that and you have to wait 5 years for it to show
Right.
up? And as you're mentioning, you mentioned about having to file that lawsuit. That doesn't mean the probate judge is sitting there waiting for you to come in.
No.
And you're going to be able to get that done in 2 or 3 days.
No.
That may take a while, won't it?
The probate process, we usually estimate taking an estate when somebody dies through probate. Estimate usually a lot of times could be 12 to 16 months. The whole process. Now, if there are those emergencies, of course, you can try and get in front of the probate judge, but you're usually looking at least a couple months before you're going to get anything. Now, that gets really scary because probate court also deals with people's guardianships and conservatorships when people are incapacitated.
Right.
So that can deal with their health care decisions as well. And the money to pay for health care. So if Uncle Joe's same situation, let's say he has $100,000 in his Town and Country bank account, but he has dementia and we need to get him into a nursing home or a long-term care facility, and nobody can get to that money to pay them
Right.
without the judge's order, then we have to wait. And even if it's a few months, we're waiting that whole time. And how are you going to come up with $4 or $5 a month to get him into the facility and do all of that? And you don't even have the ability to make those healthcare decisions for him without the right documentation, and then that's where it gets really scary.
And that's when people, unfortunately, they sometimes turn to these quick loan places and they
Right.
get 35, 40% loans.
Oh my
or
gosh, yeah.
they actually will go to a bank and get a loan against a home. You know, and it might be a second mortgage
Yeah.
just to get enough money to get them through, and then they find out maybe there's only $28 left in that account. All of a sudden, now you got a major problem.
Right. And if somebody needs long-term care and you ever end up owing the government or owing those nursing home or long-term care facilities, they're going to come after their money.
Yeah.
And so it's sad if we don't do planning ahead of
That
time.
means the house is theirs.
That means if they need to sell the family farm or the house or whatnot, it's going to happen. Or you're going to have to take out, make sure you're paying that loan indefinitely, even after your member's gone.
Right. So,
Right.
there's so many things to consider, and that's why this is so important for you to try and get all these affairs in order. There are so many documents anymore, and we're just really kind of skimming over this, but I would like you to kind of touch on a couple of those different things.
Okay.
Obviously, healthcare directives, huge, need to have that done. But also the different things about power of attorney. You might want to explain, people think a power of attorney is a healthcare directive. It is
Sure.
not.
So,
It's similar, but it's not.
Right. So there are two different general types of what we'll call durable powers of attorney.
Okay.
And durable just means those would stay in effect if you're incapacitated. And that's the way we want them, because that's when we need them. And in general, there's a financial one, which would give your family the ability to deal with any of your property. You can give them the ability to deal with real estate, bank accounts, financial accounts, cars, anything we need to do on that end. So that's the financial one, where we can actually designate who you would want to be in charge of those things and make decisions for you. They're still obligated to act for you. The other side is the durable power of attorney for healthcare, which has two pieces to it.
Okay.
So that's the healthcare part of it. The durable power of attorney part of it says, here's who I want to make my healthcare decisions for me if I cannot. So if a doctor says I am incapable of making my decisions, I want, these people, and you can name who you would want to make those decisions for you. The second piece of that is the healthcare directive. That's where you actually can give instructions that no matter who is making the decisions for you, they have to listen to. And those are those decisions that are most frequently referred to as those do not resuscitate type orders. So if the doctor determines that there's no reasonable likelihood I will recover from whatever it is, then I do not want to be on a feeding tube. I do not want to be on a ventilator, that type of thing. And you can get as detailed as you want, or you can leave it blank and leave those decisions up to your family. But that part of it's that living will or directive is what we call it. And so we usually put those in the same document, and most attorneys in Missouri do. But those are the two pieces of that.
But see, if you do something on your own, like a legal Zoom,
Right.
maybe one of those isn't in there.
Right.
Or maybe two.
Or you
of
might
them
not
aren't in
sign
there.
it right, because we
yeah.
also need two witnesses, and they need to be what we call
No.
uninterested
Yeah.
witnesses. So they cannot be any of these family members that are going to make those decisions
Right.
for you. The idea is that the law wants us to make sure we don't have anyone influencing you to make those decisions. And we have to have a notary. And so
Right.
those are the kind of pieces that people might miss.
And people may have something like in a healthcare directive. I remember my mom and dad's policy came to me and said one doctor can make the call and say no, they're not going to come back. And I said I don't think so. I'm not going to take one doctor's word for it. He might be a tired guy that day after maybe being at the hospital all day long, and I come and ask him a question. He goes, I don't think you're going to be able to come back. He just oh well, let's just pull the plug. No, I don't think so. Let's get a couple, at least two. Sometimes even three. You want to, if you're going to make that kind of decision on a person's life, you want to be sure that is accurate from everything that they're not coming back.
And we customize that depending on the client's wishes, because some people are totally comfortable with one.
Well, they are.
No problem. I'm good with it. Or
they trust their doctor. That's what they wanna
And
do.
some people, I totally understand, have think through the situations that really could occur, and it bothers them. And they want more requirements on that.
So my question is if I have a doctor and it's like a general practitioner, he is not a specialist, and so his call might be it doesn't appear that they're going to come back. Or the specialist says, well, we might be able to do this and see if this will actually reactivate the brain if you want to go through that. Now, they give you that option. So again, these are little things that if you don't talk to an attorney, you're not going to know.
Right.
You need to actually sit down with them and say, okay, what if? Which is one of the neat things. You're not going to be able to do a lot of that one-on-one kind of thing at the seminar, but if somebody wants to go into this a little further, you ask all the questions. I mean, the attorney's going to ask you questions, but you ask questions right back because they need the feedback from you as much as you need the feedback from them.
Right. And we spend a lot of time together. So my process is a 4-meeting process, and usually those meetings are about 2 hours or so each.
They're long.
Yeah, and then we do the follow-up. So we do flat fees, and we'll do that follow-up with people, which means we just stay in touch essentially on a continuing basis. And I want them to call with a question about how to title something, or if they are worried something needs to be changed, I want them to call and not be worried about getting a bill in the mail for calling or emailing me or getting a hold of us, because otherwise I'll do them no good. And that large investment is usually when we are doing, either you don't have a plan or it's so old that we're really doing everything from scratch again.
Right.
But once you go through all that hard work, then it's really just maintenance. And so we recommend updating and reviewing that every 3 years. And in my office, I do a 3-year review with my clients at no charge, where we'll sit down again together and just make sure everything's still the way they want. And what will usually happen then is maybe there's a change in family circumstances, and it'd be minor tweaks to it. Maybe we're taking somebody out of a role we designated because they are sick or overwhelmed in their own life and putting somebody else in, or
Right.
So it's not that big massive planning
Start all
again.
over.
Yeah, we're not starting all over.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you do the hard work, get it done, and then really you can have that peace of mind going forward.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they always tell you to update it because divorce. We know a lot of divorces happen
Yes.
where somebody has access to your health records. Well, you probably don't want them to have access to those health records, and so you want to take their name off that HIPAA list. You also, in a case somebody may have passed away,
Right.
and they might have been the top executor, which
Right.
then goes to the next one. Well, the next one say, after I've been thinking about this, I really don't want to. You've got a chance to go ahead and redo all of this. Now, once you get your paperwork all done, though, it is filed. So it's recorded.
Well,
You
we
know.
actually don't.
Yeah.
So actually, I have copies of it, but the neat thing is with the documents, especially with the trust, we can keep it private. So we talk about exactly where to store those, right? Who has
Right.
copies? How can they be accessed by
But
our
they
family?
can record them if they want.
Yes, and you can record. Yes, you can record a trust agreement if you would like, and we can talk about why you may or may not want to do that. Same thing with the powers of attorney. You may or may not want to record them.
If you put it out there on a recorder, it's open to the public.
Yes.
Right.
So some people, sometimes that privacy is an important thing for people. So we talk about whether they would want to do that. And then the feedback, some of the feedback I've been getting in my office this year, especially from clients, is that with the healthcare powers of attorney and directives especially, I've been getting feedback that if they are over, 4 or 5 years old,
they won't take
they
them.
are not taking them. Right. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to sign new ones every 3 years at that review meeting, even if it says the exact same thing, so that we can try and build that redundancy in there, build that into the plan, and make sure they're always going to work when our clients need them. So,
Makes sense. If that's what the hospitals are requiring, but there's nothing that says that they have to take it.
Right.
After they can take it after 5 years.
Yeah,
but
there's nothing in the law that says they would expire,
right.
but we're getting the feedback there. And of course, the guess is that the
Something
hospitals
is
are getting
changing.
burned,
Right.
where people are coming forward, like you said, somebody's divorced, somebody has an old one, they come forward with it, give it to the hospital. Maybe it's 15 years old and they relied on it, or something like that happened where they've gotten in trouble, so now they're starting to be careful. So we'll just adjust. The easiest thing is just adjust and,
Sure.
and plan for that.
Or in that healthcare directive, the person that they had left made a decision to, they suddenly don't get along with anymore.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, which
we-
happens in families all the time. We all go through ebbs and flows in relationships on how things are going.
Sure.
Mhm.
So it's good to update that, and it's one of the things that once you have it in place, you feel like, okay, I'm done with it. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, you don't have to worry about all that hard work to get it there, but you do need to worry about any changes that may possibly happen, because that's all it takes is a phone call to your attorney and say, hey, we're not doing this anymore. We need to update that form.
And that's the other reason to work with an attorney who does this type of work, because you're going to rely on me to let you know if there's a change in the law, to let you know if I see something else coming through my office somebody struggled with that we're going to want to come in and change, right? To stay up on all of that. What are the courts doing? What's the law? And we do have a change in the probate code coming up, so we're kind of watching some of those things as well. So that's just another reason to put that burden on somebody who's watching this every day.
Now, we haven't really talked too much about the taxes, and I know you're not Larry, but
Yeah. I am not a
No,
CPA or a tax attorney.
No, but one of the things is, because as you mentioned, estate planning does involve a lot of financing.
Mm-hmm.
There's people with IRAs when they
Yeah.
pass away. There's different things you can do with IRAs, and one's their survivorship IRA,
Mm-hmm.
and some you can, if you definitely need to leave it to who you want to leave it to, and designate
Mm-hmm.
it. Don't wait until it's too late, because
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have that designation, it doesn't.
There could be tax implications, and then once again,
ton of them.
and when you name a beneficiary, what you're doing is keeping that out of probate court. So
Right.
first of all,
Right.
so that's a positive thing.
Right.
So if you don't have anyone named, or you name a minor child, that's not going to work. That would have to go through probate court, because minors cannot own any kind of property outside of a trust, or if the person you named is now gone, or there are those potential issues there. So we want to watch those beneficiary designations and keep them updated. And then the other side of that is what you touched on, which of course I will give my disclaimer again. I am not the accountant,
No,
but in general, we want to be careful. And this would be a great question to have Larry talk to us about in detail tomorrow night. Is that there are stretch out provisions, especially with IRAs and retirement accounts, those tax deferred accounts, where there are certain times where there would be minimum required distributions that they call, where you have to pull money from those
Right.
accounts at certain times. And there's what they call the stretch out provisions. So what we do is we look at those, because if you have a spouse, we can sometimes name that person as the beneficiary, even if you have a trust, and they can sometimes take over some of those benefits for you. And so that'd be a great thing for Larry to talk to us about as well, and really give us some clarity there on.
A lot
on
of people
what
forget about their IRA. It's my IRA, but then all of a sudden something happens, and who do I leave it to? Well, that money is still yours, but you have the right to leave that to a beneficiary.
Right.
Life insurance policies
Yep.
and different things that go on there. And that includes some people have insurance that are whole life policies, because they have an accumulated value. Okay. So if they have an accumulated value and they say, okay, I'm at an age right now that life insurance isn't doing me any good. I don't need to cover my house payment anymore. I don't need to
Right.
cover this. I can cash that in. Well, make sure when you know you're going to cash that in, there's going to be could be a tax implication.
Yeah.
Or you can cash that in or put it into your trust. And as you mentioned before, a lot of those different things can happen. So you have a lot of options, and a lot of those are based upon tax information, correct?
Right. So you'll want to understand, right? What would be the tax? Let's walk through. Okay, here are my three options. What would be the tax implications of each of those options? And that's where a CPA like Larry can really give a lot of clarity on that.
Right.
And there are other little things too. So if somebody has a trust, a lot of times we will have provisions in there that somebody serving as the trustee, the person taking care of the assets, managing those assets, could be compensated. Well, if you have one of your children who is actually going to inherit through that trust, who's also serving in that trustee role, if they take compensation, if they pay themselves from the trust, they will get taxed on that as income. Where if they take it as an inheritance and it's under the estate tax exemptions, then they will not. And so those are the kinds of things. That's why you work with the attorney
Right.
and the CPA. Most of us do not have an estate tax problem right now, luckily. So we get even more flexibility in our planning.
Well, they don't drop
So-
that level back down, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But if they do, then of course that's something of course we stay on top of, and we'd be talking to and alerting clients to get in there if there are any major changes like that we're worried about people having to deal with. And in Missouri, luckily, we do not have a death tax or estate tax here. In Missouri, a lot of states do.
A lot of them do. A lot of them have almost a birth tax and a death tax. You
Yeah.
have to pay to get born, and you got to pay to die.
And I always tell everyone, because I've worked with a family who used to live in New Jersey, and that was the funniest one I've heard of yet, is that you have to pay to leave the state of New Jersey. So if you want to move, they have an exit tax.
Crazy.
So luckily, we live in Missouri.
Yeah.
And right now, we don't have any of that.
Now one of the things, and I know a lot of people around here have farms, that when you pass, and this is something you really need to ask Larry about, because a lot of that property was maybe bought back in the 40s or 30s, and your basis in that property, it might be minimal. But now that somebody passes and they want to move it on to somebody else, and it has to get reassessed. Oops.
Right.
You definitely want to watch out for that, because that could get reassessed at hundreds and thousands of dollars. and then that's what they're going to use as their new basis.
Right. And so what we're talking about with basis, that's tax law. And so that's Larry's
That's what I
area
mean.
of expertise.
Definitely.
Right?
But we have a lot of people with
so
farms
just to
around
put
here.
that in real, more plain English, what we're really talking about there is looking at whether or not we're going to get taxed on that increase in value, that appreciation. That's what we're talking about. And so, yeah, that's definitely something that we want
In some
Larry
cases
to
you
cover
do.
as well. And there are certain times that we can do what we call a step up in basis between
Right.
spouses, but that's Larry's arena, and he can definitely help you with that. And it's definitely something you want to talk to him about. The other thing that's really interesting with everyone, I work with a lot of people who have farmland and who run cattle and have those businesses in their family. And I've been dealing with a family right now that's been in court over 3 years. They did planning with another attorney. And what happened was they ended up using a tool called a beneficiary deed for a family farm. What a beneficiary deed does is it is essentially a transfer on death or a payable on death, similar to those two vehicles, but it's for real estate.
Right.
And what it does is it says when grandma and grandpa die, mom and dad own the farm jointly. When mom and dad die, then the 4 grandkids own the farm, right? And that kind of thing. That's the idea, is that you can pass it generation that way. It stays out of court, but we end up with what we call joint owners of an undivided interest. This means everybody owns the property at once. Nobody owns any specific piece, and if they can't get along, it's a disaster. And so the family that I've had, the poor family that's been stuck in court over 3 years, they actually ended up with people from different generations owning the property at the same time even, and not getting along. And they've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on attorneys. They've spent over 3 years in court where nobody can do anything with that farm. So if you were trying to run a cattle operation on it, it would be down the tubes because nobody can agree on anything. And then the saddest part is they're never going to talk to each other again. It ruined any kind of family relationship they had because everyone was fighting.
And when you talk about that beneficiary deed, that does not include the tangible property of those cattle.
No. Nope.
So all that is just
So
up
all
in
the farm
air.
equipment, fencing, tractors, cattle, all of that stuff would not be included. That would
just
all have
the
to go
real
through.
estate.
That would all have to go through probate court if they didn't have any other kind of planning in place.
And you can't dispose of it until probate is
Mm-hmm.
dictated on it. So those cows that might have been perfect for market,
Yep.
now
Who has the authority to sell them?
Well,
Right.
nobody can sell
Right.
them, and they have to sit there, and they still have to be fed. You still got to take care of them. You still got to watch over them. Somebody still has to take care of the farm, but probate won't let you sell those cattle to make those funds available to you that would help you run the
Right.
farm. So, think of all these things ahead of time, and that's why these programs that you're putting on are so important. There's scenarios out there that I think people don't have a clue could happen to them.
And one of the scariest ones that we've encountered, and I know of some real world cases where it's happened, but I'm afraid it's going to happen a lot more coming up with a change in the law here in Missouri, is involving if we do not make those designations to our family members to take care of our finances, to take care of our health care, and we end up with a family member who is incapacitated, we have to go to probate court and file that guardianship or that conservatorship. The law is going to make the judges look at us more carefully. They are going to be required to do credit checks. They're going to be required to do background checks. They really are trying to emphasize doing more extensive checks on anyone who's asking to serve in those roles. So it may not be an automatic, and that's scary. There was a situation I know of, a son went to court and asked to be appointed as guardian and conservator of his father, and the court denied it. That judge thought that he wasn't financially fit. Maybe he had a criminal case, 20 years ago. Maybe was stealing or something like that.
Could be a gambling
Had
problem.
credit card debt. Just wasn't good with his own money or anything like that. And all of a sudden, he can't even make healthcare decisions for his dad. And those situations are really scary.
Yeah, and sometimes a lot of that goes when you start talking about even some trustees that have lost money, they've taken it stolen from trusts. They can be removed by a judge. So you really want to make sure you make very careful decisions. But that's why when you listen to the seminar, you're gonna learn a lot about different types of scenarios, like we're throwing out right now. But things that are important to your family, important to you. You want them to stay in your family. You want them to remain with the people that you love and love you. And that is what really this is all about. And not put them through, could be 3 or 4 or 5 years of just agony, trying to fight over different things just to get them separated out. I actually was not the executor of an estate when this lady passed away. When I first came out of college. And of course, I had no idea what all this was about. My uncle, who was the executor, was living in Florida, and he appointed me assistant executor. Got the court to actually agree to it. Well, this was an insolvent estate. And of course, I'd never gone through a solvent estate, much less an insolvent one.
Yeah.
Well, she had nothing, and it really is it's a hard lesson to learn. When this woman was renting an apartment, but she had credit cards. Of course, the credit card people all want to be paid yesterday.
Yeah.
She had no assets. She had a car. She had a few little things that she left that she wanted to give to her family. They ended up, and by the time it went to court, the probate judge says, if you want those items, you'll have to pay this amount of money to get them. That money will go toward paying off her credit card debt. And then they came in, they took all her clothes, everything, everything that she had wasn't worth much to pay off these debts. And then once the judge said, okay, and some of them did pay the money, some of them didn't. It wasn't that important to them. And so whatever money was raised, the judge ordered those credit cards to be paid. That's really all she owed on was credit cards. And then closed the case. And that was it. And that's how you're going to remember her. That's the last thing I remember is that day
Going
in
through
court.
that
And this was the sweetest little young lady. She'd do anything for you. And you never knew she was in this kind of financial situation. But when it's so impersonal at that point. But you know her as a person. The family who was there knew her as a person. And this is how it's going to end.
Yeah.
And that's, Michelle, I don't want anybody to go through that. I didn't really know this woman that well. I mean, I knew her. I had met her, and she would not, especially when I was younger, I used to cut grass out there. She'd come out with lemonade, stuff like that. Really nice lady.
Yeah.
And then now watch that all come to an end like that. It really kind of pulls on your heartstrings. And when I got back to the office, I said, it's really sad that that's what your life comes down to. A court case where they say, okay, pay this, that's all they get. That's it.
And probate essentially is a court case that your family has to file for the benefit of your creditors. So that's one of the reasons we try and avoid it. Because all you're really doing is giving notice for anyone to claim that person owed them money to come forward and to fight with you about it. And the other thing is, of course, which actually should not be surprising to us in today's world, is working with an attorney after somebody passes is also important because a lot of people will come forward with bogus claims.
Yep.
I see it all the time. All of a sudden, people are coming out of the woodwork saying that money was owed, and it's not even legitimate. And so we need to be really careful about that, too. And just the overall idea of what you were just saying is that this is really a gift for your family. So you're going to be gone. Now, the part with the incapacity planning is a gift to you and making sure that your family honors your wishes and takes care of you the way you want, but still takes that pressure off of them to try and have to decide those things themselves when they're emotional and they actually have guidance from you. And then, but yeah, overall, we think of it as a gift to our family. Try and avoid them having to go through all that stress. Don't have those negative feelings of you at the end, and try and focus on the happy.
This is a great chance for you to go and listen to Michele and Larry. Ask the questions you think you need to ask. Because this is the time to do it. It's absolutely free seminar, and they're going to actually buy you dinner.
Yes, we're going to feed you.
It's a shame I'm not going to be here because I would be there. But,
And if you can't make tomorrow's seminar, we will have future ones, so you can still give my office a call if you'd like to get on the waiting list or get invited to the next one.
So how do they call your office?
So 573-578-2848. And if anyone is interested in attending tomorrow night, we do ask that you give us a call sometime today because we do have to give a head count for dinner.
Right. Okay. Repeat that number one more time.
573-578-2848.
Okay. Very good. Now you have a Facebook page as well, right?
At MK Legal Planning. And the event's on there as well, and you can send a message or comment on there as well.
Okay, so let them know by today, and I guess probably by this afternoon, you probably need to give them a head count.
Sure, we're going to give her a head count by the end of the day. She's been fairly flexible with us.
Very good. So try, if you are interested in this, it's going to be the Main Street Cafe in their new addition, by the way.
Yes, in their new room.
Yeah, in their new addition. So if you haven't been there, this might be a good chance for you to go see it. It is an opportunity that not a lot of people sometimes take seriously when they're younger, but if you are younger, and I say younger, and I'm talking 35, 40, 45, you may not think I need this yet. Let me tell you, you need to start doing this now.
Mm-hmm.
And when Michele tells you it takes a long time to transfer some of these things into a trust, it's not just the time factor. It's everybody does it different.
Mm-hmm.
In
Right.
in
Every
form of
institution has
business.
their own form.
So whether
and,
it's a
yeah.
brokerage, a bank, a deed, or whatever, you're going to find out you're going to have to go through sometimes a lot of steps to make what seems like a simple change,
Mm-hmm.
but it does take time. So you've got a lot of homework to do too, because, well, you could probably pay Michele to do it.
You can pay me to do it, but most people choose not to. But yes.
Really, the banks won't allow you to do that. You actually have to come in and sign it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if you hire an attorney. The attorney's going to say, okay, it's all ready for you to go sign, but you still got to go in and sign. And so you may as well just do it yourself. But and I'm not going to take any business away from you. If somebody
you're
wants
not.
To,
That's
go ahead
okay.
and take care of it. Go ahead and do it. But again, these are very important things. Deeds, recording of those deeds on your land. Doesn't matter what you have in the safe deposit box that you have in the bank that says, yes, I am going to give this property over to such and such. If your deed doesn't say that it's been recorded, it doesn't happen. It's a real estate contract, must be recorded. So there are some things that I know some people say some people don't like attorneys, and I can understand. I've had to fight a few attorneys in my life. But when it comes,
we've heard a lot of bad attorney
But
jokes.
yeah, well, some are well deserved. But some of them aren't. You actually, I will say this about Michele, that she will answer the questions when you have a one-on-one meeting with her. And she's going to get down to nitty gritty. So to really lay your cards on the table, because it's going to get asked.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the only way she's going to know what to put into your documents.
Mm-hmm. And it stays confidential in the office, so.
Right.
People have to be willing to be open and honest about it so that we get a plan that will work for them.
Right. So you just have to you have to trust an attorney, and at this stage, she's only being an agent for you. She's putting it all down, putting it together in the form that you want, and that's really what it's all about. So I do tip my cap. She does a very good job.
Oh, thank you.
But this is up to you. You need to go see this. It's absolutely free at the Main Street Cafe, 5:30 tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, 5:30 tomorrow. Dinner first?
Yeah, we will start dinner about 5:45.
Okay.
I think is when Sheila's going to have everything
Okay,
going.
very good. 5:45 dinner. And again, if you would like to attend tomorrow, I'm going to have Michele give you that number one more time.
Okay. 573-578-2848. And we'd love to see you there.
By this afternoon.
Yes.
So that they can give a head count to them down there at Main Street Cafe. Very good. Always a pleasure chatting with you. I learn more even after I've gone through a lot of different things. You and I have gone and talked to many times, but every time there's something different. And nobody can put their thumb on how it's going to affect them until they're actually in it. So, please think about it. If you have not made any plans, if you do not have a trust or do not have an estate plan, it's a good time to start thinking.
Or haven't updated yours in a while.
Or haven't updated yours. Or if you're not sure you have one.
Yeah.
Some people have made a will years ago.
Right.
May not even know where it is.
And we can easily just do a new one and put that the old one's revoked and deal with that. So, right.
Yeah, stay on top of it. Very good. Thank you, Michele.
Thank you so much for having me.
Michele Kersaw here on KSMO Radio 1340, your hometown radio station. Coming up next, we have our Bass Pro Outdoor program coming your way in just a moment here on KSMO Radio. We'll follow it up with a look at some news from the Associated Press, and then we also will have for you our Civic Record. It comes your way here on KSMO Radio, and don't forget our turkey shoot game will be coming back a little bit later on this morning right here on KSMO Radio 1340 AM, your hometown radio station.
All gave some